In this video, you will get lessons from this #1 bestseller book. I'm offering this lesson to you for free as part of my company's mission to help you reach your music dreams and have fun along the way. You will find the playlist with all videos from this course in the video description and comments. There may be information in previous videos that will make the video you are watching now easier to understand. I recommend watching the videos in order. Hi, I'm Dan Spencer, author of the Best Music Theory book for beginners. Over 5,000 people have purchased this book, pushing it to hit #1 bestseller in its category on Amazon. Now, here is the next lesson and the Best Music Theory course, Level 1. Huge congratulations to you to making it to this final chapter, this final module in the Theory 1 course, and of course in the Best Music Theory book for beginners. This is where the magic happens. Everything you've learned has led up to this because now you're going to take all your theory knowledge and you're going to use it to break down, to analyze, to understand music that you love. Now, just to let you know that the first pieces you are going to learn are going to be very easy children's songs because that's where we need to start. But once you have those under your belt, you are set to go to analyze any level 1 lead sheet that you want to, and you'll also be able to take that knowledge and bring it outside of Best Music Coach into other music that you want to understand and the music that you love. So let's talk about a lead sheet. What is a lead sheet? So lead sheets show melody in notation, using notes, with note heads and stems and rests and dots, all that good stuff, ties, repeat signs. And then there's chord symbols above the staff that show what chord is happening while the melody plays. So there's 3 parts of a lead sheet. There's chords, melody, and then there's also lyrics, which are the words to songs. Not all songs have words, so not all lead sheets have lyrics, but you will see many lead sheets with lyrics for the words to different songs. So let's start by talking about the chord. So the chord symbol is always going to be written above the staff. Sometimes there's a new chord every measure or every other measure, and sometimes there's only one chord for every line of music, and sometimes there's going to be one chord for an entire page of music. If we look at the example on this page here, you can see that in the second measure, there is no chord symbol. So we have a chord symbol here in the first measure. That's our G, but you can see in the second measure, where's the chord symbol? There is no chord symbol, but that's okay because the way chords work in lead sheets is whenever we have a chord written above a measure, that chord is going to last until we get to the next chord. So even though there's no chord symbol written here, we know there was a chord symbol over here, and that chord symbol is going to apply to every single measure that comes after it until we get another chord symbol. So the reason there is no chord symbol in measure 2 is because the G chord over measure 1, right here, will apply to every measure that comes after it until a different chord symbol is written. So chord symbols also apply to measures that have rests in them, and this is because the measures with rests are showing a rest in the melody or in the notation, but not a rest in the chord. So you can see that this measure right here, there's a whole rest and there's a C chord over it. And even over here, there's a half rest and a quarter rest, still with a C chord over it. All of that is okay. Those are 2 separate things. The rest is for the melody or the single notes, but the chord continues on even though there is a rest in the melody. So let's take a look at the second part of lead sheets, and that is the melody. So the melody is the notes on the staff. And you can also see that we have a measure here with no notes in it, but there is a chord symbol over it, and that's because the D chord would still apply to this measure here, even though there are no notes. We can see the melody goes along like this. Very nice melody there with chord symbols above. Now the last thing for us to talk about are the lyrics. We can see that the lyrics for this song are This is a lead sheet song. And those are fine words. Perhaps the songs you know have more exciting words than that, but that's okay. This is just an example for you to understand that whenever you're looking at a lead sheet, we have chords above, we have melody in the middle, and we have lyrics below, and not all lead sheets will have lyrics, so it's okay if you don't see lyrics. Some songs just don't have words to them, and they are instrumental, which means just instruments are playing, no voice or words are used. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand the 3 steps that you are going to go through to determine and to figure out what key a song is in just by looking at the music without actually hearing the music at all. So this is pure music theory that you're going to be able to understand. So what we're going to do in this lesson, we're just going to break down the 3 steps, and then in the next 3 lessons, we're going to spend 1 lesson on each one of the 3 steps, and then we're going to do a bonus lesson at the end of those to tie it all together and to walk you through the thought process of figuring out what key a song is in. So as you may remember, every major and natural minor scale is related to a key, and a key is a summary of all the notes of the scale. You remember those buckets that we put all those notes into? So when you write or perform music with a key signature, you're going to be in that key. Now here's a little advantage. It's going to make your life a little bit easier. It's still going to be challenging, but it's going to make it a little bit easier for you. All level 1 lead sheet songs only have 2 possible key signatures. You're only ever going to see the key for E minor or G major or C major and A minor. So there's 2 possible key signatures, 2 relative keys for each key signature, and that is, as we just talked about, C major or A minor, those are the relative keys or the relative scales, and G major and E minor, the relative keys and also the relative scales. So let's talk about the formula you are going to use to figure out the key of most songs. Now keep in mind that this formula works for all keys. We're just going to start with these 4 to begin with because as you'll see, it can be a little challenging just with these 4, but what I'm teaching you here works for all keys. So step number 1 is you're going to look at the key signature and you're going to figure out what possible keys the key signature could be. Step number 2 is you are going to look at the chords, and there's going to be all sorts of tips and tricks you're going to learn in a couple of lessons for actually looking at different groups of chords and which chords are used where to understand what key the song might be in. The last thing you'll learn are common notes, which are going to show you whether a song is in a certain key or maybe a different key, whether it's in the relative major or the relative minor. And when we put all those 3 pieces of information together, our possible key signatures, we're going to look at the chords, then we're going to look at the common notes. We're going to put all 3 of those pieces of information together, and when we look at a song from those 3 angles, then we're going to have a very high degree of confidence in saying the key of the song when we look at it from all 3 angles. I will see you in the next lesson where we're going to talk about the first angle, the possible key signatures. I'll see you there. The first step for you to figure out what key a song is in is to look at the key signature and then think about the 2 possible keys that are connected to that key signature. Because remember, there's relative major and relative minor keys that share the same key signature, but we're not going to be sure which is which until we look at the chords and the notes. So this is the first step. Whenever you sit down to try and analyze a piece of music, you want to look at the key signature and say to yourself, what are the 2 possible keys this song could be in? So each key signature works with both a major and natural minor scale. Remember the buckets where we could put all those notes in the buckets and then it would show us the key signature. Now, the symbol for each key signature is actually going to be the same as the chord symbol for a triad. So major keys, our chord symbols are going to be C and G. For major keys, the symbols will be C and G. Notice we don't need to write anything on that. Just like with major triads, if we don't write anything besides a capital letter, we're assuming the quality of the chord is major. Same thing here. If we just see a C or a G, we're assuming the key is major. And then minor keys would be A minus sign and E minus sign. If we have that minus sign after a letter, we are for sure going to be in a minor key. If we have no accidentals in our key signature, you can see here there are no accidentals, none. The possible keys are either C major or A minor. That's that relative connection, because if we look, there's no sharps or flats. So we have, sure enough, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then 2 ledger lines up, C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's no sharps or flats. This key signature is just telling us no sharps or flats. The possible keys, whenever you see this key signature, the first thing you're going to say to yourself is, okay, the key is either C major or A minor. If you see one sharp in the key signature, you're going to say to yourself, okay, the key is either G major or E minor. It's one or the other. It's never going to be C major or A minor when you have one sharp, because there are no sharps or flats in the C major scale or the A natural minor scale. In summary, this is a critical first step. The first step you are always going to do is you look at the piece and you say to yourself, what are the 2 keys that this piece could be in? And one key is going to be major and the other is going to be the relative minor of that major key. I will see you in the next lesson. When we're trying to identify the key of a piece and we've looked at the key signature and figured out, okay, we have our one major key, it might be, we have our relative minor of that major key that it might be, for example, C major and A minor. A second example would be G major and E minor. The second thing to do is to look at the chords of the piece of music. Now, the chords are not always going to tell you whether a piece of music is in the major or the relative minor key, but there are some useful tips you can take from looking at the chords that will help you make the decision whether the key is actually major or minor. So chords can be less useful than melody, which we'll get to in the next lesson to confirm the key of a song, but with a little information, there are a few shortcuts that can help confirm whether a song is a major or minor key. So you're going to use common chord progressions to quickly identify if the chords show a major key. Basically, what we're trying to do with these common chord progressions is just get a very quick read and say, okay, can we quickly, right now, just say this is major? And if there aren't any common chords, then we're just going to look at all the chords and from there try and factor in the chords into our decision. So a chord progression is 2 or more chords played in a row. Many songs are built out of 1 or more chord progressions, and the chords repeat throughout the song. So here's one common chord progression. That's the 1, 6, 4, 5. So 1 meaning C, 6 would be A minor, 4 would be F, 5 would be G, and we're thinking about that in terms of the harmonized major scale. So when we harmonize a C major scale, sure enough, on scale degree 1, we get a C major, and because it's a chord, not a scale degree, we're going to show that with a Roman numeral. So we're going to show the quality of the chord with the uppercase Roman numeral, and then which scale degree it relates to with the number of the Roman numeral. A minor is minor, scale degree 6. F major is major, so scale degree 4. And G is major, so capital, and scale degree 5. Now we can also think about a 1, 6, 4, 5 in the key of G major. So in the key of G major, 1 would be G, 6 would be G, A, B, C, D, E minor, 4 would be G, A, B, C major, and 5 would be G, A, B, C, D major. And you can listen to these 3 songs to get a good idea of what a 1, 6, 4, 5, I Will Always Love You, written by Dolly Parton, Perfect by Ed Sheeran, and Baby by Justin Bieber. If you ever see a 1, 6, 4, 5 chord progression, it doesn't have to happen every single measure. It could happen every 2 measures. Like you could have a C for 2 measures, an A minor for 2 measures, an F for 2 measures, a G for 2 measures. What you're looking for is that pattern of 1, 6, 4, 5. And if you see that 1, 6, 4, 5, there's a strong possibility that the key of the song you're looking at is major. Here's another common chord progression, 1, 5, 6, 4, a little bit more of a modern sounding one. Now the 1, 5, 6, 4, it works in the same way. All we're talking about are triads taken from the harmonized major scale in different order. In the case of this 1, 5, 6, 4, we are showing this in the key of C major. So we have C, which is going to be 1. We're showing the triad quality with the Roman numeral. It's a capital Roman numeral. We're showing the scale degree with the number of the Roman numeral. That's a 1. G, that's going to be scale degree 5, major. So it's a capital 5. A minor, 6, lowercase because it's a minor quality chord. 6 because scale degree 6 in the C major scale. And then F, well, that's major, so it's uppercase, scale degree 4 in the C major scale. Now let's think about this same chord progression if it was in the key of G major. G would be 1. 5 would be G, A, B, C, D major. 6 would be G, A, B, C, D, E minor. And 4 would be G, A, B, C major. So the useful thing about using these Roman numerals to talk about chord progressions is we don't actually need to say the actual chord name or talk about the chord symbol. We can just say in the key of G major, it's a 1, 5, 6, 4. And as soon as I say a 1, 5, 6, 4 in G major, you can think, okay, 1 is G major, G, which is major. Then you think about 5, major, minor, minor, major, major, and G, A, B, C, D, so D major. And then you can think about 6 as major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Whatever scale degree 6 is going to be, the quality is going to be minor. We go G, A, B, C, D, E, so E minor. And then 4, major, minor, minor, major, G, A, B, C, C major. 3 examples of this chord progression actually in real songs. The song Girls Like You by Maroon 5, Hey Soul Sister by Train, and So Lonely by The Police. Here's common chord progression 3. Now, there are more common chord progressions than just these 3, but these are 3 good ones to remember. Now, this common chord progression is very interesting because it does not start on 1, it starts on 6. So you would actually think, perhaps, that instead of it being 6, 4, 1, 5, it might be a 1, 6, 3, 7. Think about it that way. Okay, so look. Is this common chord progression a 6, 4, 1, 5, or is it a 1, 6, 3, 7? Does that make sense? Because, think about it this way. If we're in the key of C major, then sure, A minor scale degree 6, F is scale degree 4, G is scale degree 5, C is scale degree 1. But if we're in the key of A minor, we could think about A minor as being 1, F is being 6, C is being 3, and G is being 7, and those are triads taken from the A natural minor scale, harmonized to the 5th. So what is interesting is that when you see this chord progression, you're going to treat it as major, not as minor, even though it might make sense to do so. This common chord progression, just like the other common chord progressions, works the same way. If we were to do this in the key of G major, we would have E minor would be 6, C would be 4, G would be 1, D would be 5. And we can tell that from the Roman numerals. 3 examples of this common chord progression are A New Day Has Come by Celine Dion, Apologize by Timbaland, and Faded by Alan Walker. So I know this was kind of a long lesson, but hang with me here. We're going to do a summary of how to identify the key of a lead sheet when you use chords. So number 1, you're going to identify the major and minor key associated with the key signature of the music. Number 2, you're going to make sure that all the chords belong in the key of the key signature. All the chords in the song should come from the harmonized scale of the key. So, for example, if you think you're in the key of C major and you see a D major chord instead of a D minor chord, that means there's an F sharp on that D major. You've probably taken a wrong step somewhere. Go back and look at your key signature. Now, that being said, Realistically, in music out in the real world, you do get chords that are not from the same key in songs all the time, but to start off with, we're just going to hang out with songs where all the chords are in the key. Major keys usually start on 1, 4, or 5. Minor progressions for minor keys usually start on scale degree 1, with the exception of this 6, 4, 1, 5. That's not 1, 6, 3, 7. If the first and last chords of a song are major 1 or minor 1 of a key, it is likely that the song is in that key. So for example, if a song starts and ends on a G chord, it is likely in the key of G. If a song starts and ends on an E minor chord, it's likely in the key of E minor. If it starts and ends on a C major, it is likely in the key of C major. And if a song starts and ends with a chord of A minor, it is likely in the key of A minor. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand what common notes are and how to use them for figuring out the key of a lead sheet or a song. So there's a few common notes that can point to if a song is probably in the major or the relative minor key. You're going to pay special attention to the notes that land on the strongest and strong beats. Go back and review Module 2 or Chapter 2 if you need to now, of each measure, since the strongest and strong beats are more important in our musical culture. So common notes in the first measures, not measure, but measures. You're going to look at the first 3, 4, 5 measures. You're going to look for scale degrees 1, 3, and 5 from the major scale in general, but especially landing on strongest and strong beats. And you look for scale degrees 1, flat, 3, and 5 from the natural minor scale, landing on strongest and strong beats. And the last couple of measures, not measure, but measures more than 1, you're going to look at the last couple measures. You're going to look for scale degree 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7 from the major scale, landing in general, but also especially on strongest and strong beats. And you're going to also look for scale degrees 1, flat, 3, and 5 from the natural minor scale, in general, but especially landing on strongest and strong beats. So to identify the key of a lead sheet using a melody, number 1, you're going to identify the major and minor key that are connected with the key signature of the music. So is it C major and A minor, or is it G major and E minor? Number 2, you're going to analyze the notes of the melody for the first few measures and in the last few measures of the song as if the key is major, and then also as if the key is minor. There's going to be 2 different ways you're going to look at the melody. You're going to play a game where you're going to pretend it's major, you're going to pretend it's minor, and then you're going to see which is the most likely case. Which is the most likely? Is it major or is it minor? Make sure you pay special attention to the notes that land on the strongest and strong beats. 3, if the notes in the first and last measures, not measure, but measures, and especially on the strongest and strong beats, include scale degree 1 of a scale, the song is usually in the key of that scale. So you're looking for more of either major or minor common notes in the first few and the last few measures. So let's go and play this game where we imagine it as a major key, and then we imagine it as a minor key. We imagine the melody to be major, then we imagine the melody to be minor. So you can see up top, this is going to be a minor melody, but let's go through it anyway so you can understand. So first thing to do is to look at the key signature. Now the key signature has 1 sharp, which means it's either going to be G major or E minor. We're not sure which right now. Don't look where it says minor melody. Don't look there. Look, we're going to imagine, okay, we know there's 2 possible keys. It's either G major or E minor. Now we're going to imagine the melody as if it's in E minor and in G major, and we're going to see which way of imagining it comes up with more common notes, especially looking at strongest and strong beats. So let's imagine this from a major perspective. So we're not going to worry about this for right now. We're just going to worry about major. So we're putting our major hats on. We're going to imagine this melody as major. So if we're imagining this melody as major, we're going to look at the first note, which is E, is scale degree 6. And then the next note, F sharp, as 7, then 1. Okay, so in the first measure, we do have a scale degree 1 landing on a strong beat, landing on beat 3 because we are in 4/4. And then sure enough, in measure 2 on beat 1, we do have a major common note. Remember, our common notes for major are 1, 3, and 5. We do have a major common note. We have 3 landing on the strongest beat. And we also have 5, and we also have 3. So even though we don't have a common note landing on the strong beat, we still have 3 5s and 3s. So we have a 3, we have a 5, and a 3. And these are all common notes for a major key, which means, oh yeah, it's a strong case for being in a major key. Then in measure 3, we have scale degree 2, scale degree 7. And then in the last measure, we have 6, 3, 6, which are not very strong notes in terms of our common notes. So we only have one common note in the last measure, and that's 3, and it's on a weak beat. So already right here, we can see that if you write out the scale degrees, thinking about this melody as being major, we end up with 6, 7, 1, 3, 5, 6, 3, 2, 7, 6, 3, 6. Not super strong, and you'll see why right now as we look at the minor. So if we look at the minor, we start off with scale degree 1 on the strongest beat, first measure. Scale degree 2, sure, on the weak beat, and then we have scale degree flat 3. So again, we're imagining all these notes as if they are part of the E natural minor scale. Scale degree flat 3 on the strong beat. So we have the strongest is 1, strong is flat 3. That's really good so far. Then let's look at measure 2. We have scale degree 5. That's one of our common notes. We have scale degree 1 and scale degree 5. These are all common notes for a minor key. And on top of that, scale degree 5 is on the strongest beat, and scale degree 1 is on a strong beat. Whereas when we thought about it from the minor perspective, we had, yes, scale degree 3 on the strongest beat, scale degree 6 on the strong beat. It's not as strong. Measure 3, nothing doing for the minor. We have scale degree 4, scale degree 2. Here's where it really drives home is measure 4, we have 1, 5, 1. If we think about it for minor, we have E, B, E. We have tonic, dominant, tonic. As opposed to submediant, mediant, submediant in the major key. So having that 1, 5, 1 here, we can see that sure enough, lining up with our strongest and strong beats, we have scale degree 1 here on our strongest beat. We have flat 3 here on a strong beat. Even here in measure 2, we have 5, 1, 5. So can you see that the common notes for the minor key, first of all, there's more of them, and second of all, they're landing on strongest and strong beats in a way that if we imagine it from the major perspective, it really doesn't make as much sense. So this is a minor melody, and it's a minor melody because we can see that the common notes of 1, flat 3, and 5 from the natural minor scale, in this case the E natural minor scale, are showing up. There's more of them, and they're landing on stronger beats. Now let's look at a major melody. So in this melody, you're going to see that there's a lot more common notes from the major scale, and those common notes from the major scale are landing on strongest and strong beats much more than the notes from the natural minor scale. We're going to start by focusing on the minor. We're going to imagine this melody is a minor melody, and we're going to imagine this is in the key of E minor. So it starts off flat 3 to flat 3 in the first measure. Okay, not bad. Then we go to flat 6, flat 7, flat 3, measure 2. We tie over to measure 3. We have scale degree 2 in measure 3, and then we have 3 flats. We have flats 3, flat 7, flat 3. Okay, the first warning bell here, guys, for a level 1 lead sheet for a simple song is there's no scale degree 1. You really, really want to see a scale degree 1 somewhere in the first 4 measures. Again, this is not always going to be the case, but if you don't see a scale degree 1 anywhere, that's really, really odd. That's very odd for simple, basic songs. Simple, basic songs, you're always going to have a scale degree 1. So right there, that's the first warning bell. There's no scale degree 1 when we imagine this melody to be minor. And on top of that, there's no scale degree 5. The only common note we have is scale degree 3. And yeah, it does show up on the strongest and strong beats in measure 1 and in measure 4. But you're going to see that when we think about this from a major perspective, it makes a lot more sense. So from a major perspective, so we're now going to imagine this melody as if it's a major melody. So with the scale of G major. So G would be scale degree 1, F sharp scale degree 7, G scale degree 1. So 171, that is stronger than flat 3 to flat 3. Then we go 4 scale degree 5 to scale degree 1. That's much stronger than flat 6, flat 7, flat 3. As you can see from major melodies in our last couple measures, sometimes we can have scale degree 6 and scale degree 7. And sure enough, we can see scale degree 7 right here. And then in our last measure, we have 151. 151 is so much stronger than flat 3, flat 7, flat 3 in terms of determining the key. When we think about this melody from a natural minor scale perspective, and then from a major scale perspective, the major scale perspective is so much stronger. If we think about this as a major scale, it is so much stronger. There's more common notes, and those common notes are landing on stronger and strong beats. I will see you in the next lesson where we're going to talk about combining chords and melody to get an even clearer picture if the song or piece of music you're trying to understand is in a major or minor key. I'll see you there. In the last lesson, I made it very clear that simple and easy songs are usually going to have scale degree 1 in the first measures or the last measures, but here's the thing, you're not always going to be dealing with simple, easy songs. So the fact of the matter is, a lot of the times you're actually not going to find scale degree 1 of the scale that's associated with either the major or the minor key of the piece of music that you are trying to figure out and understand. So in these cases, you will need to look at the chords and the other common notes in the melody together to try and figure out if the melody is showing the major or the minor of the two possible keys in the key signature. So let's unpack this example and take a closer look. So first, let's look at our key signature. In our key signature, we can see there's no sharps or flats, so it's either C major or A minor. Now, the second thing to look at is the time signature, because now we know where our strong beats and our weak beats are going to be. So if we look at the first measure, we have two major common notes, which are 3 and 5. If we thought about this melody from a major perspective, if we thought about this melody as if it was in C major, and for the minor, we start on scale degree 5, and then we have 7. And we can see that in the second measure, sure enough, from a melody perspective, the major common notes we have are scale degree 3, and the minor common notes we have are scale degree 5. So far by measure 2, honestly, if I just saw the melody, I'd be leaning towards major. Now let's look at our next two measures. Oh, we have a lot of scale degree 1s. If this was a major, we'd have a lot of scale degree 1s here. So in these next two measures, we even have, again, imagine we're in the key of C major. We're imagining back and forth between the major and minor. Right here and right here, we have these scale degree 1s. And here again, scale degree 1. So you might think, if you look at these first four measures, you don't look at the chords and you just look at the melody, you might very quickly and rightly correctly think that we're in the key of C major. And sure enough, as we look at the next four measures, we see that time and time again we have this C note coming up, which would make us think we even end on a C note. We're even ending on scale degree 1. So from a melody perspective, it would actually make a lot of sense to say that we're in a major key, but here's where that idea falls apart. Look at the chords. Look at the chords. We start with an A minor. We end with an A minor. There isn't a single C chord in this entire 8-measure piece of music. There are no C chords. So even though there are C notes, and even though the melody is not very strong in terms of pointing towards the minor, it still is going to be a minor melody with minor chords, and the key is actually going to be the key of A minor. So you have to look at the chords and you have to look at the melody and then look at both of them together. Because as you can see here, the melody is not clearly pointing to it being a minor key, but when you zoom out and you just look at the chords, you go, wait a second, there isn't even one C chord in this entire piece of music, but there's 2 A minor chords. So right there, that's telling you, remember, from the chords, if you start and end on 1, and we think about the Roman numerals, A here, that's 1. A minor at the beginning and end, those are both 1, lowercase Roman numeral 1, which means we are really in the key of A minor for this piece of music. So in summary, the example above is more likely a major melody just by looking at the scale degrees. However, when you look at the chords, you'll notice there are no C chords. So even though the melody is showing minor common notes on weak beats, we can tell the key is minor because of the chords. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to do a summary and a review of the 3 steps to understand and know the key of a piece of written music. So to make the final decision on what key a piece of music is in, ask yourself the following questions and think about the information. Number 1, key signature, major, minor keys. There are 4 possible keys for level 1 lead sheets. That's going to be C major, G major, A minor, E minor. So ask yourself, what are the 2 possible keys that this song could be in? Look at the key signature. Which is the major key? Which is the minor key? They will always be relative major and minor. Which keys could you use? Is it going to be C major and A minor, or G major and E minor? Then you're going to look at the chords and the chord progressions. Do the chords show a common chord progression? If they do, great. You have already a really solid idea that it's going to be major. If the chords do not show a common chord progression, ask yourself, do all the chords come from the harmonized scale that is the same name as the key? If there are chords from a harmonized G major scale, and you think the key is A minor, so if you see those D major and those B minor chords that come from the G major harmonized scale, and you think the key is A minor, go back to step 1, because you might have got that key signature wrong. In more complex music, that is common, but for these easier level 1 lead sheets that we're going to do, you're never going to see that. So what are the first and last chords? Remember that example from the last lesson where we had the A minor as the first and last chord? That was really important to figure out the key of the piece of music. Ask yourself, which chords are used the most? Again, the last lesson that you just watched, there were 2 A minor chords, there were no C major chords, so to think of it as being in the key of C major was very unlikely because of that. Now, there can be minor chords in a major key, and there can be major chords in a minor key. So if there are no minor chords in the song, the key is probably major. And if there are very, very few major chords in the song, the key is probably minor, but again, you need to go through and look on a case-by-case basis, one song at a time, to double-check yourself. So then ask yourself, are the chords showing a major or a minor key? Then, step number 3, you look at the melody, common notes, and the strong beats. So ask yourself, are there major or minor common notes or scale degree 1 from one of the 2 possible keys on the strongest and strong beats in the first few measures? Now remember, this is not a make or break. This is not a 100% foolproof thing, but look for it first. Think of the scale degrees in terms of the major key. Which scale degrees fall in the strongest and strong beats of the first few and last few measures? Then think of the scale degrees in terms of the minor key. Which scale or scale degrees fall on the strongest and strong beats of the first few and last few measures? Then ask yourself, are the melody and common notes showing a major key or a minor key? Lastly, take it all and put it all together. So if the chord progression is major and the common notes look to be major, most likely it's a major key. If the chord progression, you can't tell if it's major or minor, and the common notes are major, it's probably a major key. If the chord progression is minor, the common notes are minor, it's definitely a minor key. And if you can't tell from the chord progression, but the common notes are minor, it's most likely a minor key. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand how to write and analyze and show the key of a piece of music. So after you've gone through your 3 steps and you've figured out what key the piece of music is in, then you're going to write a little symbol below the staff to show the key of the piece of music. So what you're going to do is step number 1, you're going to write the letter name of the key below the clef in the first measure of the music. Then you write the quality of the key, nothing for major, a minus sign for minor, and then you write a colon. That's it. So, for example, in this example of the first couple measures of the incredibly popular song, A Baby Shark, the key is going to be G. So we start off by writing a G. Then we add the quality. In this case, no need to add anything because the quality is major. And then we add just a little colon, 2 dots right next to it. Now here's an example of Scarborough Fair, which is a classic English song. And you can see that I've gone ahead and added A minor with a little colon there. And that's how we show the key of a piece of music. So, if the key of a piece of music was C major, for example, then below the clef, you just write a C and a colon. If the key is G, it's going to be a G and a colon. If the key is A minor, write an A minor and a colon. If the key is E minor, add the colon. That's it. That is how you are going to express and show the key of a piece of music. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand how to perform a scale degree analysis of a piece of music. So a scale degree analysis is where you go through and you look at the melody and you understand which scale degrees are being used from the scale that's related to the key that the piece of the music is in. So what you're going to do is you're going to write SD for scale degree, and then just like from the last lesson, you're going to show what key the piece of music is in, either C major, G major, A minor, or E minor. And that's going to look like this, scale degree, G major. Step number 2 is you're going to write scale degrees below the staff under each note that is an attack in the piece of music. So what I mean by that is you're not going to write a scale degree for the second note of a tie. You just write it for the first note of a tie. We can see that example right here that we have on one of the doot-doo-doos. This note on beat 4 is tied over to beat 1, but we're only writing the scale degree for the first note. Rule number 3, if there is a note that is 1/2 step lower than where it should be in the major scale, the scale degree gets a flat accidental. And rule number 4, if there is a note that is 1/2 step higher than it would be in the major scale, the scale degree gets a sharp accidental. For example, a sharp 4. Add a flat accidental to scale degree flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7 if you're writing a scale degree analysis in a minor key. And if a flat 3, flat 6, or flat 7 is raised up by 1/2 step from the natural minor scale, you're going to remove the flat accidental from the scale degree and leave it like it normally would be from the major scale. So let's take a look at some of these examples. Here's a scale degree in a major key. So you see we have SD for scale degree. Then we have the little way we have of writing the key. That's the key of G major. And then we have the scale degree for each note. So D would be scale degree 5. So sure enough, here's scale degree 5 right under the D. The E, scale degree 6. Sure enough, there's scale degree 6 written underneath. And then there's a lot of G's, so those are all scale degree 1 for the doot, doot, doo, doot, doo, doo. Let's take a look at a minor scale degree analysis. So here we see, again, scale degree. Sure enough, it's right there. And then A minor for the key, because you can see up here, well, our key signature, There's no sharps or flats. And the first and last chord is an A, and also it's starting on an A. So this piece of music is definitely in A minor. Now you can see that, sure, are you, those are both on scale degree 1, and then going to, and those are all on scale degree 5. Then we go 2, flat 3, 2, 1, and then we go 5, 7, 1, 7, 5, 6, 4, 5, and this 6 right here, this is where things get interesting because the key is A minor, but the note is F sharp, which does not belong in an A natural minor scale. So normally this scale degree would be F natural, and it would have a flat in front of it, but because we're raising that F up by 1/2 step, we take the flat away and we add the sharp accidental. And from time to time, you will see notes that do not belong to the key in the melody. And whenever you see those, if you're in a major key, follow rules 3 and 4. And if you are in a minor key, follow rules 5 and 6. So in summary, with this change to scale degree 6, where we're not going to show the flat, in measure 8, there is a scale degree that is not from the A natural minor scale. Now, do not let a non-scale or non-key note stop you from figuring out the key. If 95% of the notes are in the key of the key signature or from the scale that belongs to the key signature, you are good to go. There is no flat accidental in front of scale degree 6 because of rule 6, that when we raise a note up 1/2 step from where it would normally be in the natural minor scale, if it already has a flat in front of it, like flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7 for the scale degrees, we're going to take that flat away. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to write a Roman numeral analysis. It's also called a harmonic analysis because we're going to analyze the harmony or the chords with Roman numerals. So step number 1 is to write the key and the colon again below where you did the scale degree. So we can see that up here we have scale degree, key of G, and then below that we're writing again just the key of G to show that everything that comes after this is talking about the key of G. Step number 2 is you're going to write one Roman numeral directly below each chord symbol. You see that? Directly below each chord symbol goes a Roman numeral. And you're going to write the Roman numerals for the key that you did, that you think the song is in, which you just did for the scale degrees as well. Now, here's a couple of tips. The chord symbols should show how the chord relates to the key of the music. So for example, if we think about the key of G, the scale is G major. The Roman numeral is going to show the quality of the chord and the scale degree of the note name of that chord in relation to the scale. So G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, D is 5, E is 6, like that. So in the key of G, G is 1. In the key of E minor, a G chord is 3. In the key of C, a G chord is 5. In the key of A minor, a G chord is 7. And you're always going to show the quality of the chord with the major chords being capitalized, the minor chords being lower case. So let's look at this example of Baby Shark with a harmonic analysis. We can see that we start on a D. D is scale degree 5, so the Roman numeral is going to be a 5. And then it's going to be a capital Roman numeral because the quality of the chord is major. And then we go to G, which is scale degree 1, so the Roman numeral is going to be a 1, and it's going to be capital because the quality of the chord is major. Let's take a look at a minor example now for a Scarborough Fair. So you can see we still have the scale degree analysis from last time, but we're not going to pay attention to that. We're going to look at the harmonic analysis. So you can see that the key is written here, and sure enough, beneath each chord symbol, there is a Roman numeral. So A is 1, E is 5, A, B, C, D, E, and the quality is minor, so it's lowercase. G is 7, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the quality is major, so it's capital. And then we are back to A minor, so we are back to 1. And then Remember here, this A minor still applies to this measure, even though there's no chord symbol in it. Chord symbols apply to all measures that come after them until we get a new chord symbol. We get a new chord symbol in measure 6. Sure enough, C, A, B, C is scale degree 3. So we're going to write a Roman numeral 3. We're going to write it capitalized because the quality of the chord is major. And then we're back to A minor, and then we go to E minor, and then we finish out on A minor. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to walk you through and talk you through a scale degree and harmonic analysis of Baby Shark. So Baby Shark is a traditional American campfire song, and we're going to check it out here. So we can see and go through just the scale degree analysis first. So first of all, we need to determine the key. Now the key is G major, but let's understand why the key is G major. So we can see from our key signature that we have one sharp. So the two possible key signatures we have are going to be G major and E minor. Now, how do we know that it's G major instead of E minor? Well, first of all, let's look at it. Okay. Let's imagine our scale degrees from a major perspective. So from a major perspective, we start on scale degree 5. We go 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 7, 5, 6, 1. Okay, so there are some scale degree 6s there, which if we think about it from a minor perspective would be 7, 1, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 7, 1, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 7, 1, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 7, 1, 3. Okay, we can see that if we think about this melody from a major angle, yeah, sure, it makes sense. 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Also, from a common notes angle, for the minor, it also works as well. Flat 7, 1, flat 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. That also works as well. But now let's look at the chords. Okay, so we start on D, then we go to G, and we stay on G for 4 measures. Then we do C for 4 measures, then we go to E minor for 4 measures, then D for 2 measures, and then we're back to G. Now this is actually a 1, 4, 6, 5 chord progression. Think about it. G is 1, C is 4, E minor is 6, D is 5. This is a common chord progression, and this is actually going to be major. Now here's another way we know that's major. Really where the song starts. This part right here, this is like a ready, set, go. This is not quite starting the song yet, but right here, where it really starts, we have a G chord, and it ends on, sure enough, a G chord. It also ends on scale degree 1, if we were thinking about it from a major melody perspective. So based on that, we're going to say, yeah, this song is in the key of G major. No way is this song in the key of E minor. And from there, you can take a look, and I recommend you take some time with your book to look over the scale degree analysis, and then also look at the harmonic analysis because the Roman numerals are below each individual chord symbol. Welcome to your analysis bonus pack where you're going to look at 10 songs throughout history and actually analyze them and understand them and break them down with both scale degree analysis and also Roman numeral or harmonic analysis. Now, just to let you know that in each of the next lessons, I'm going to be giving you basically all of the answers in real time as I walk through and do a full analysis of each song. So what I recommend doing is actually printing out 2 copies of each one of your bonus songs. So you can see there's a group of 10 songs. You can just print those out twice. I recommend going through the first copy alone by yourself. Go through all of the steps you've learned for how to analyze a lead sheet, figure out the key by looking at the key signature, the chords, the melody, and then the chords and the melody, and then do a scale degree analysis, then do a Roman numeral analysis. Then take your work that you've already done, all 10 songs, and watch the next 10 lessons with your completed work, and you can actually fill out with me in real time on the second copy of the songs, and then you can compare between what you did to all the correct answers, and you can cross-reference them, and that way you'll be able to see where you went wrong, where your mistakes are, and then you can work backwards from there to actually see what the problem is. I will see you in the next lesson where we are going to start analyzing 10 famous songs from history. See you there. In this lesson, we are going to analyze the classic song Amazing Grace. So the first thing we need to do whenever we analyze a piece of music is to figure out what key it is in. So let's take a look at the key signature. Okay, now we see that there is one sharp, so our two possible keys are going to be G major or E minor. Now what we need to do is we need to look at all the chords first and see if we can get a clue as to whether it's going to be in G major or E minor. So let's take a look, maybe just the first four chords. So we have D major, G major, C major, and then back to G major. We do have an E minor in measure 6. Well, there's one E minor. Oh, and then we also have an E minor in measure 14. We can see that the last chord that we end on is a G. Also, the last note we end on is a G, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And we can see that in the second measure, sure enough, we have a G. Fourth measure, we have G. So we have a ton of Gs. Now we can also see that we end on that G major chord, and as we know, when we start or end a song on a particular chord, that's going to give a lot of weight to whether we're going to decide if it's going to be in that key or the relative minor or major. So in this case, just from the chords, we can see that, yeah, sure enough, it's starting on a D. The second chord is a G. We can see that this starting chord right here, it doesn't really hold a lot of weight. There's not a lot of melody underneath it. That second measure right there, where you can see, sure enough, we have the G chord and the G note. That's given us a little bit more oomph in terms of what we're going to pay attention to, and then obviously ending, the last chord is a G. Now let's take a look at the scale degrees. So let's imagine for a moment we're in the key of E minor. Our notes are going to be D, G, B, B, A, G, E, D, D. So already we can see that in the first line of music, sure, we have one E note in measure 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's pretend like these scale degrees are in the key of E minor. So we'd have flat 7, flat 3, 5, 5, 4, flat 3, 1, flat 7, 7. Okay, so a couple of 1s, a couple of 3s, a couple of 5s. All right, these are notes that, well, do hold a little bit of weight. And sure enough, we can see that, for example, we are in 3/4, so we know the strongest beat is going to be on beat 1. We can see that in measure 2, we have the G landing on beat 1. In measure 3, we have the B landing on beat 1. In measure 3, we have the G. And in measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you have in measure 4, we have the G. And in measure 5, we have a D. So already right there, we can say, okay, so if we're thinking about the key of E minor, we would have flat 3, 5, flat 3, flat 7. Now let's think about this in the context of a G major scale. So in the G major scale, we'd have, well, 5, 1, 3, 3, 2, 1, 6, 5. So straight off the bat, it's not immediately clear that, well, the G major is more likely than the E minor from the melody notes. However, I think we could look over here at measure 5 because that's the one difference maker. Because if we think about it this way, this first note, this is either going to be 1 for G major or it's going to be flat 3 for E minor. The B is either going to be 5 for E minor or 3 for G major. And the G is either, again, going to be flat 3 for E minor or scale degree 1. Now, here's the real difference maker, is that this one right here, it would be flat 7 for E minor, but it would actually be 5 for G major. And as we know from our common notes, well, here's the thing. Flat 7 is not one of our common notes, but 5 is. So technically, we do have one more common note. Also, whenever you see 1s As common note, scale degree 1, that always holds a little bit more weight than scale degree 3 or scale degree 5. So, based on the fact that we have a lot of scale degree 1s, we can also look at our last measures, and we see, sure enough, we end on a G note. So highly unlikely that the key would be E minor, and we would end on a G note with a G chord. Highly unlikely. So we can see, based off the notes for the first 4 measures and also the chords for the whole song, and then also looking at the note in the last 2 measures, as well as how the chords end, we can say for sure that this song is in the key of G. So let's start off by doing our scale degree analysis. So we're going to come over here under measure 1, and we're going to put scale degree G. Okay, so we have 5, 1, 3, 3. That 3 had a bad day. 2, 1, 6, 5, 5, 1, 3, 3, 2, 5, 3, 5, 3, 1, 6, 1, 6, 5, 5, 1, 3, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Okay, now let's do a Roman numeral analysis. So we're going to put the key. Key is G, put a little colon. Now, our first chord is going to be D, which is actually going to be 5. Then we have the next chord, which is G. That's going to be 1. Next chord is C. That's going to be 4. Next chord is G, and that's going to be 1. Next chord is E minor. That's going to be 6. D is 5. G is 1. C is 4. G is 1. E minor is 6. D is 5. C is 4. And G is 1. Okay, so now let's zoom out and see what we can understand from this melody. So a couple of interesting things is that we can see every time the melody sort of comes back around for a new line. So we can think about like, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. That's sort of like one line. That saved a soul like me. That's another line. I once was lost, but now I'm found. That's another line. Was blind, but now I see. Now, something interesting that we can see is that every single time we're about to go into a new line, we're hanging out in the melody on scale degree 5. Sound that saved a maze 5, 1. We can see that as well. Over here was blind. So you can start to see these patterns in melodies with things like this, where you can see that almost every time it comes around, you're hitting scale degree 5 before you go back to 1. I think something that's interesting as well is to look at, for example, these last 4 chords in these last 4 measures. Because what we're doing, it's almost like we're walking down the scale back to 1. Now, what I mean by that is this. We have we have chord 6. Those are the chord built off scale degree 6, which is going to be an E minor. Then the chord built off scale degree 5, which is D major. Then the chord built off scale degree 4, which is C major. And then we go back to 1. So we have 6, 5, 4, 1. It's like we're walking down. It's like we're taking stairs down to G major. And what's also really cool is we can see that same idea mirrored in the melody as we go 3, 3, 2, 1. So we can see that there's this movement here of taking the scale down as we go down with the chords. So that's another really interesting type of thing to look for, especially in older songs. This is not something that you'll always find in modern music, but to see these patterns where it's like you're using the music to give everyone the feeling that you're coming back home. And the reason you feel like you're coming back home is because you're walking down the stairs of the scale back to 1, both with chords going 6, 5, 4, 1, so walking down the stairs and taking a little jump back, but then with the scale degrees also going 3, 2, 1, going back home. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to break down and analyze the traditional campfire song, Baby Shark. So let's get after it. The first thing we always need to do is to figure out the key of the song. So let's look at this key signature. We can see 1 sharp, which means our 2 possible keys are going to be either G major or E minor. Now it's our job to figure out which it's going to be. So first thing for us to do is to look at the chords. Now, the way this song works with the chords is actually going to be a little bit misleading because you can see our first chord is a D major and the last chord is a D major. And you might be saying to yourself, well, hang on a second there, Dan. You just taught me that usually the first and the last chord, well, that's going to tell us the key of the piece. And here we have a D as the first chord, a D as the last chord. That doesn't really make sense because you'd think we'd have a first and last chord of either being a G or an E minor. Well, here's the thing. I'm actually going to give away what the key is by this explanation. Just like in the last song that you analyzed, Amazing Grace, and we saw that every time the melody came around, we were doing 5, 1, that movement of 5, 1, it's like driving you forward. It's like a launch pad in music. Whenever you go from 5 to 1, it's like jet fuel. It just pushes you forward. So what we can see here, actually, what is happening is we're going with the chords 5, 1. Think about it. G, A, B, C, D. D's the 5. We're going 5, 1. And when we do Baby Shark here, this 5, if we were to repeat the song, because typically the song Baby Shark, you repeat it over and over again. The first time you say a baby shark, then you say grandpa, then you do grandma shark, then you do daddy shark, then you do mommy shark, then you do uncle shark, like whatever, doggy shark, cat shark. You just say different things and you keep on repeating it. What this D is doing here, this 5, this is actually getting us ready to launch back into singing the song a second time. Because remember, whenever we have 5, 1 in a melody or in the chords, it is like jet fuel pushing us forward. So the reason why the song does not end on a G, because it's in the key of G, it's not ending on a G because it wants to repeat. And that D right there, that 5, that's just like pouring in the jet fuel to blast us off to go back and repeat it. So now that I've given away the game and you actually already know what key it's in, let's go ahead and understand further why it's in the key of G by looking at all the chords and then also the scale degrees. So sure enough, we can see we have, well, a whole bunch of G. We got a bit of C, we got a bit of E minor, and then we end on a D. Yeah, so already from the chords, you can see that the likelihood of it being in E minor, because E minor happens almost last, it doesn't start, it doesn't end on E minor, highly unlikely. Now, let's look at the melody, because, oh my gosh, if there isn't just a ton of, well, what is scale degree 1? But let's think about this melody first. from an E minor perspective. So if it was an E minor perspective, let's just look at our first line of melody up here. We'd go flat 7, 1, flat 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Now, which is more likely? Flat 7, 1, flat 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, or 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I'll tell you, the one that is more likely is 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And when we think about the melody from the key of G major perspective, sure enough, we have 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So let's run through a scale degree analysis. A rockin' and a rollin'. We're going to put scale degree G major. So we start with scale degree 5. Then we go to scale degree 6. And then, well, we have a whole bunch of scale degree 1s. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Remember, you don't need to label it after a tie. 1, 1. Now, the cool thing is that melody literally repeats on the next two lines exactly the same. See, 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Next line, 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Starting in measure 10, 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then we actually get to something different. Measure 14, which is going to be 1, 1, 7. So, I'm not going to make you watch me write out 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 for the second and third lines. We're just going to go straight to the Roman numeral analysis. So let's start by labeling our key. Okay, then we have 5. Then we have 5. Then we have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 6. Now we go to C major. So that's going to be 4. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Then we go to E minor. That's going to be 6. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then we end baby shark. That's going to be a 5. So let's look at what we can understand here. We can see, sure enough, that every single time we have the melody come around, we're going 5, 6, 1. Now, we talked about how 5, 1 wants to launch us into the next thing, but we can see here that 5, 6, 1, even though we have the 6 between the 5 and the 1, that's still serving as sort of melody rocket fuel to launch us into each repetition or every time we're repeating the melody. So we're going 5, 1, and sure, we're throwing in that 6 in between 5 and 1, that scale degree 6 here. But here's the thing, that 6, it almost doesn't even matter. What's really mattering here, what really makes this thing work, is the 5 to the 1. And every time it comes around, we have the 5 to the 1. Next time we have, oh, what is it? You know it, 5 to 1. Every single time. And so we can see that this entire piece of music is using this idea of 5 to 1 to launch us back into repeating things. So we have 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, repeat. 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, repeat. 5, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 7. Now here's the thing, right there, after we've just used melody notes 5 to 1 to launch us into repeating the same melody 3 times in a row. Now here at the end, we have chord number 5, which is going to launch us back into repeating the whole song, going back to 1. I will see you in the next. In this lesson, we're going to be breaking down the classic American folk song, Clementine. So, first things first, as always, we're going to check into the key signature because we want to figure out what key this song is in. So we see we have 1 sharp at the key signature, which means we're either going to be working in G major or E minor. Okay, so first thing for us to do after we've figured out the key signature and our 2 possible keys that we're going to be in is to look at the chords. Now we can see that, sure enough, in measure 1, we have a G. And then it stays G until we get to measure 11, then we go to D, then we have a C, then 16 we have G, we have E minor for a couple measures, D, and then we end on a G for the first page, Let's go on to the second page. We stay on G for a whole long time. And D, A minor, G, E minor, D, G. Okay, so we can see that the last chord of the whole song is G. We can see the first chord of the whole song is also G. That right there is pretty much all we need to say that the song's in the key of G. But let's take a quick look at the melody. Let's see. For the first two measures, we have, well, G, G, G. So if we were in the key of G, that would be scale degree 1, 1, 1, which are common notes for sure. And let's take a look at page 2, the very end. And sure enough, we're ending on a G scale degree 1. So not only is the chord G, but the note is G. So based off that, we are going to feel very, very confident in saying the key of this song is G major. So let's start with our scale degree analysis. We're going to put scale degree G. Okay, so we have scale degree 1, scale degree 1, scale degree 1. Oh, then we go to 5. And we go to 3. 3, 3, 1. Okay, measure 7. 1, 3, 5. Remember, because it's tied, we're not going to write another scale degree for the second note of the tie. 5, 4, 3, 2. You have a measure of rest. 2, 3, 4, 4. Here we are on measure 16. Going to go 3, 2, 3. Measure 17. Just have a 1. Measure 18. We're going to go 1, 3, 2, 5. Measure 22. 7, 2, 1. Okay, and that's all for page number 1. So let's continue our scale degree analysis on page number 2. Okay, so for measure 25, we have 1, 1, 1, 5. If there was any question if this was in the key of G or not, I mean, we're in the chord here is G, and we're just hammering on scale degree 1. So yeah, definitely the key of G major. Okay, 3. My measure 29. Darling. Scale degree 1. 1, 3, 5. Tied to the next measure and next line. Measure 33. 5, 4, 3, 2, 4, 3, 2. Ooh, and a measure of rest. Measure 37. 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 3. Measure 41. 3, 1, 1, 3, 2, 5. That's down to measure 45. That's going to be scale degree 5. 7, 2, 1. And that is the whole song with scale degrees. Okay, now let's go back and let's put in our Roman numerals. So to start off with, we're going to put the key is G major. And the first chord we have is a 1. Okay, let's see where our next chord is going to be. Well, we have no more chords for the first line, nor indeed for the second line. So we don't have another chord until measure 11. So that also right there, that's a super big clue. If you ever look at a song and it's just like chord number 1, you're trying to figure out the key, and it's chord number 1 for like 8 measures, 10 measures, all in a row, that's a big clue you're in the key of that chord if it lines up with the key signature. Okay, measure 11, D, which is going to be 5. Then we go to C, which is 4. Then we go to G, which is 1. E minor, which is 6. And D, 5. It's kind of a messy 5, but it's 5. Then 22, 23. We're back to 1. Yeah, let's go on to page 2. That G from the previous page continues on, remember, with lead sheets until you have a new chord written down. The same chord just keeps on applying to all the measures. So this G keeps on being G all the way through there, all the way through here, all the way through here, up to this D here. So we have a whole lot of G. Then 37, 38, measure 38, we have this A minor, so that's actually going to be a 2. Then we're back to G. Then E minor, which is 6. And then D, which is 5. And then finally, we're back to G, which is 1. So I think something interesting to talk about here is that we can see very clearly with some of these older, more traditional songs that not only is it kind of easy to spot the key because whatever chord is built on the tonic is just, well, it's going to be easy to spot. Because like right here, we have this G chord here that lasts, this G right here, up at the top, this G right here lasts for all of that, lasts for all of this, all the way up to measure 11. And then we can see again we have this G here that just goes on for days and days and days and all the way up to here. And we can see right at the very end that we're sort of launched into the ending by this 5. Remember, because D is the 5. And because scale degree 5 going back to 1 and also chord 5 going back to chord 1, that's like rocket fuel that just pushes the song forward. And sure enough, we can see we go from 5 back to 1. We also have scale degree 5 here leading us by kind of a less direct route, but sure enough getting us back to 1. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be breaking down another celebrated traditional song, Comin' Round the Mountain. So first thing for us to do is to figure out the key of the song. So let's look at the key signature. The key signature has 1 sharp. That means our 2 possible keys are G major or E minor. Now let's take a peek at the chords to see if we can figure out which one of those keys it's going to be just based on the chords. So we can see that we have a D, a C, and a G as our first 3 chords. But let's keep on going through this. And then we have a C, and a G, and a D, G, C, D, G. Okay, so just because there literally are no E minor chords here, we can immediately say, okay, the key is going to be G major. Like there is no way that this song could be in the key of E minor and have not one single E minor chord. It just would not happen. So we can see that, sure enough, the ending chord is a G. It's also ending on what would be scale degree 1 if we're in the key of G. We can also see 5, 6, 1, just like we did in Baby Shark, driving us back to 1 in the melody there. But I will not get ahead of myself. Let's keep going methodically through this. So at the top, the interesting thing here is we have a D, a C, and then a G. Now, this is also kind of like Baby Shark in the sense that it started off on that D, and that D was like the jet fuel pushing us to the G. It's the same thing here. That D pushes us through the C all the way to the G. But let's start off with a scale degree analysis. So let's write scale. First, let's write the key. So I'm going to put scale degree for G. And we're going to start on scale degree 5. Then we go to 6. Then we go to 1, 1, 1, 1, 6, 5, 5, 6, 1. Then 1 continues on. And then we're back to 1 again. 1, 2. You're on measure 11. 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1, 2 for comes. 5, 4, and now we're in measure 19. 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 6, measure 23, 6, 6, 6, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 5, 5, 5, 3, 2, 5, 6, 1. All right, now let's do our harmonic analysis. We are going to make do. So we're going to put our key for G for the Roman numeral analysis. So D is going to be 5. And then we go to C, which is 4. And then we go to G, which is 1. Then we hang out there for a moment until we go to C, which is 4. Then we're back to G, which is 1. And we stay on G for the next 4 measures. Then we go to D, which is 5. Gilby. Go to measure 19, which is G. Then we go to measure 23, where we have 4. 27, we have D, which is 5. And then we end on 1. So a couple cool things we can see. We can see that we have this sort of jet fuel thing we were talking about of 5, bringing us back to 1. Also, I think it's interesting to notice there's a couple of patterns. And I'm going to break these patterns down for you. So we can see in the melody, we have, for example, here in measure 1, 2, 3, in measure 3, we have this G for 2 measures, and the only notes that are being played are G's. So if we think about G as being, for example, a chord or a triad, we would have basically just the tonic being played tonic, 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 tonic. Now, where this pattern repeats and gets interesting is we can see over here, again, we have the G chord, but instead of repeating the tonic over and over again, we have the third repeated over and over again, but we can see it's actually the same exact rhythm. We have half note, dotted half, quarter. So you can see we have the same exact rhythm in the melody, but instead of hanging out on scale degree 1, we now have scale degree 3. And we can see this pattern repeated again. Sure enough, here we have the same. This is the same exact as this, as this, as this, as this. Same exact thing. So actually going to be the same chord and also the same notes. Now, what's interesting too is you can see here in the melody, it's like we're going down. And here in the melody, we're also going down. Ah, interesting. Now, here's where the pattern really takes off, and that is, okay, the chord is now C. And if we think about C as being a triad, so C is going to be the root, E would be the third, G would be the fifth. The note in the melody is actually playing the third of the triad. And what's really cool is that it's the same exact rhythm as what happens right above it. So check this out. This whole thing right here that I'm circling in yellow, that is G major chord, and underneath it or on top of it, you have the melody of 3, 3, 3, 3, right? Or if we think about it in terms of the triad, G would be 1, B would be the third. So you have the third, the third, the third, the third, and the rhythm is half, half, dotted, half, quarter. And we can see we actually have the same exact thing happening here with the C major because the third is E. So we have third, 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 and it's the same exact rhythm, half, half, dotted, half, quarter. And we have this pattern one last time here on the last line. This time not on the third, but we have the D major chord, and we have, sure enough, the same rhythmic pattern, half, half, dotted, half, quarter, and the note that is being played in the melody is the root. So some very interesting patterns there, and I think we could actually also draw one more pattern here, which is we have at the end of a lot of these rhythmic patterns where we have the half, half, dotted, half, quarter. So we can see we have half, half, dotted, half, quarter, half, half, dotted, half, quarter, half, half, dotted, cap. Like this entire, here, I'm going to switch up colors here. In blue, you can see this entire thing that I'm circling here. This is all half, half, dotted, half, quarter. And we can see every time after the half, half, dotted, half, quarter, we have, well, not every time, but a lot of times we have this sort of descending line bringing us back to, oftentimes, G. So not descending here, but after the half, half, dotted, half, quarter, we make our way where? To G. After this, half, half, dotted, half, quarter, where do we make our way to? A G note. After this, half, half, dotted, half, quarter, where do we make our way to? A G note. Here's the one exception. We make our way to an E note here, but afterwards, we make our way to a G note. So there's really interesting patterns that you can start to find once you actually go through and do these analyses and you actually look at the scale degrees and then you start to see the patterns and then you look at the patterns, not just of the notes, but also the rhythms too, and then also look at the patterns of the chords. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to break down and analyze the American classic cowboy song, Home on the range. So first thing for us to do is to figure out the key of the song. So let's look at the key signature. We have 1 sharp, which means, oh, you guessed it, we're either going to be in G major or E minor. So now our job is to figure out whether we are in fact in G major or E minor. So let's look at our first chord. We have a D to a G, but we've seen this before. Oh, we've seen a D to a G or a 5 to the 1 in the first chords of, for example, Baby Shark. Okay, we also saw that in Amazing Grace, by the way, that it started on a D, went to a G, and the key turned out to be G. So let's see if this is actually going to fall in line with both Amazing Grace and Baby Shark. Let's see, sure, we have a D, G, C, G, D, G, C, G, D, G. Okay, that's the first page. Page number 2, G, C, G, D, G, C, G, D, G. Was there an E minor chord? There was not. So just based off the fact that there are no E minor chords, we can already know we are going to be in the key of G, but let's look at the chords so we can understand further why. We can also look at the melody to understand really why we are in the key of G. So just like Amazing Grace and just like Baby Shark, this song starts off on the 5 chord. Now this is not terribly uncommon, especially for older songs, because you would start on the 5 as like the jet fuel to get the song started. That's like starting your engine. Now we can see that sure enough, the chord that we end on is also a G major, and also the chord that the first page ends on is also on G major. Now we're going to get a little bit further into that in Theory 3 and Theory 4, understanding larger scale patterns of why that's relevant. But just understand for now that if you're looking at a page of music and there's 4 measures pretty much on every single line, and you get to the end of the first page and it ends on a G, and then also the second page ends on a G, that is a relevant piece of information that you can just tuck away and say, okay, if it ends on a G, if a page ends on a G and I think I'm in the key of G, yeah, most likely in the key of G. And let's look at our melody note. So we can see in our melody we're going 5-5-1 to start off with, and at the end of the first page we're going 2-1, but we're ending on scale degree 1. And then at the very end of the song, yeah, just hanging out on scale degree 1. So we finish the first and second page on scale degree 1 and on chord G, which is going to be Roman numeral 1. So we can have a very, very high degree of confidence in saying that the key of this song is in fact G major. Also, we just know for a fact it's G major because there is not a single E minor chord in the whole song, and you cannot have a song in E minor without an E minor chord for now. When you get very, very advanced, okay, so let's do our scale degree analysis. So we're going to put S, D, G for the key. 5, 5, 1. 2, 3, 1, 7, 6, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 1, 1, 1, 7, 1, 2, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 7, 6, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 1, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 3, 5, 5, 1, 1, 1, 1, 7, 1, 2, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 7, 6, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 1, 2, 1. There you go. Now let's do our Roman numeral analysis. Let's go back to page 1. I'm going to put G for the key. Oh, we should actually move these back a little bit. There we go. That's better. Okay, so we start off with 5. 1, 4, 1, D is 5, 10 G is 1, C is 4, G is 1, D is 5, G is 1. Page number 2. G is 1, C is 4, G is 1, measure 22, we stay on the G, and go to D, be 5, 26, G is going to be 1, C, be 4, G, measure 30 is going to be 1, D is 5, G is 1. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the patterns and cool things we're going to spot and find here. So we can see, sure enough, that the song begins by us launching into it not only with chord 5 to 1, but also scale degree 5 to 1. Now, there is a lot of repetition in this melody, so we can see that basically right here, this melody is repeated right here. Another interesting thing we can see is that the way this song is structured, we always go back to 5 to launch us into 1. So we have D, G, C, and then we go G, and then D launches back into 1. Then we do C, G, D, launches back into 1. Then we do G, C, G, D launches back into 1. Then we go C, G, D launches back into 1. Another interesting thing to look at is we basically do have a chord progression here, just like we've had for other songs, but let's talk about this because this is not a common chord progression, but it is a chord progression nonetheless. And it is relatively common to use these chords in this order, but it's not what we would call one of those like super common chord progressions that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs use this exact order of chords. We can see the chord progression basically is 1, 4, 1, 5. So we have C, G, C, D, 1, 4, 1, 5. And then we can see in the next 8 measures that the chord progression changes slightly. It goes 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. So it's almost like we have a question and a response. So the question is 1415. That's like 1415. And then the answering chord progression is 14151. So you see that here we end on a 5 in the first 8 measures here, and then we end on a 1 in the next 8 measures here. So if we zoom out, it's almost like this entire first 8 measures is like ending on a 5. So we can think about these entire first 8 measures as 5, and then the whole second 8 measures as 1. So just like we've seen the melody drive things forward from 5 to 1, and just like we've seen chords drive things forward going from chord 5 to chord 1, here we can see an entire section ending on 5, driving us to an entire section of 8 measures that then ends on 1. So here again, we have like a 1-4-1-5 type of a thing here, but it's structured kind of different because we could see here that our 1-4-1-5, 1 has 2 measures, 4 has 2 measures, 1 has 2 measures, 5 has 2 measures. But what we see here in the chorus is 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 4 measures, 2 measures. So we have the same order of chords, but they're each getting less time or more time in the case of the G. Now, this is something that you can see all the way into modern pop music, where sometimes you'll have the same exact chords or similar chords, but they'll speed up or slow down in different parts of the song. And that's actually what helps us hear the difference of different parts of the song, learn more about different parts of songs in theory too. And then we can see that in the last 8 measures of page 1, we had 1-4-1-5-1. And sure enough, we can see that in the last measures of page 2, we have the same chord progression, 1-4-1-5-1. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to break down and understand Lavender's Blue, which is actually a traditional English folk song. Let's start, as we always do, by figuring out the key that this piece of music is in. So we have 1 sharp in the key signature, which means we're either going to be in the key of G major or E minor. Now, we're going to look at the chords and the melody to see if we can figure out which one it is going to be. So we can see we start on a G, C, G, D, page 2, G, C, G, oh, E minor, C, G. But here's the thing, even though there is an E minor, look, we're starting and ending on a G chord. See that? Start on a G, end on a G. So right there already, starting and ending on a G chord, we know pretty much for a fact that this song is going to be in the key of G major. Now, let's take a look at the common notes in the first 2 and last 2 measures just to confirm that we are indeed in the key of G major. So we can see that in the first 2 measures, we have D, 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 which if we were in the key of G would be 5, 5, 5, which sure enough is one of our major common notes. If we're in the key of E minor, that would be flat 7, flat 7, flat 7, which is not one of our common notes that we're looking for. Now we can see in the last 2 measures, sure enough, we have a G, which would be scale degree 1, which is one of our common notes for G major. It is also a common note for E minor because we would have the flat 3, but because we start and we end on the G chord, yeah, we're definitely in the key of G. So let's run through and do a scale degree analysis. Here we go. We're going to start off by writing scale degree G. Okay, we start off on 5. Whoops, there we go. So we're going to start off by writing scale degree G and scale degree 5. 5, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Okay, let me go to measure 5. 1, 7, 6, 5, Oh, and then we have measure of rest. Measure 9. 5, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I was walking down the scale there. Two, 3, 2. Okay, we have 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, walking down the scale. 1, 7, 6, 5. And again, sort of walking down the scale too. We think about doing a descending scale. 6, 5. Measure rest. Measure 25. 5, 5, 6. Walk it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. All right, let's go back to the top and let's do our Roman numeral analysis. So we start off by writing the key, which is G major, and we have Roman numeral 1. Then we go to measure 5, where we have the 4 chord. And then we go to measure 5, where we have the 4 chord, and then 1, measure 9. Okay, the next chord we have is the measure 13. It's going to be the D. It's going to be 5. Next chord's going to be on measure 2. It's going to be G. It's 1. 21 is C. And then we go to G. And 25, 26, 27. We have E minor, 6, 29, we're at 4, and then we're back to 1 to end things. Okay, so first let's talk about the melody, because the melody is very, very interesting in terms of the patterns that we can see. So we can see that the first thing we have is we have 5 walking down to 1. 5, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just walking down the scale. Then we walk down the scale again, this time starting on 1. 1, 7, 6, 5. Then we walk down the scale again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then, yeah, sure, here it's not quite walking down the scale. I shall be queen. And then we repeat the melody. We walk down the scale. We walk down the scale. We walk down the scale. And then we walk down the scale. So you can see that almost every single line of melody is walking down the scale, either from 5 or from 1, or in the case of the last line, walking down 4, 3, 2, 1. So very interesting to see those patterns showing up there. And let's take a look at the chords as well. So we have 1, 4, 1, 5. Then we have 1, 4, 1, 6, 4, 1. So again, the chord progression for the first page is like a question. It ends on 5. It goes 5, and that 5, that's jet fuel. It's going to drive us back. And sure enough, it drives us all the way through the second page to 1 in the last 2 measures. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to break down and understand the classic Scottish folk song, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, which actually did get new life in the 60s when the famous British band The Beatles actually did a cover of it. You can go check that out on the interwebs if you are so inclined. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to figure out the key of the song. So let's look at the key signature. We have 1 sharp, which means we're either going to be in the key of E minor or G major. Let's take a look at the chords to see what's going to be the most likely just based off the chords, and then we'll also look at the melody. So we start on a D, G, C, G. So we have a D, G. We've seen that before. Okay, we saw that in Amazing Grace. We saw that in Baby Shark. Let's keep it going. Okay, we have an E minor, then a D, G, C, G, A minor, D, G, D. Page number 2. G, C, A minor, D, G, E minor, A minor, D, G. Okay, so we do have a couple E minors here, so we can't immediately, just based off the fact that there are no E minors, automatically call it as being in the key of G major. However, we can see that it ends on a G chord, and it kind of also starts on a G chord. It launches in, if we're thinking of it in terms of the key of G, it launches into G from the chord 5, D, into G. Now, the next thing for us to look at is the melody. So let's look at the melody for the first line. So let's imagine this melody in the key of E minor. If we were in the key of E minor, the melody would be flat 7, 5, 4, flat 3, 4, flat 3, 1, 1, flat 7. Now, if we're in the key of G, it would be 5, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 6, 6, 5. So we can already see that there are going to be more common notes for G major as opposed to minor common notes. But let's take a look at the last 4 measures to check as well. Okay, so let's imagine these last 4 measures in the key of E minor. That would be 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3. Unlikely for it to end on a 3 with a G major chord above it, but okay, a flat 3. And then if we imagine these last 4 measures in the key of G, we'd have 7, 7, 7, 6, 7, 1. So much more likely that the melody is going to be ending on scale degree 1 rather than scale degree 3. Also highly, highly unlikely that the melody would be for E minor, because we can see that last chord there, that's a G major chord. The whole song is ending on a G. So we're going to call this the key of G major. So let's start off by doing our scale degree analysis. So I'm going to write scale degree, G for the key. Okay, we have 5, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 6, 6, 5, then some rests, then 5, then we have 3, 2, 1, 1, 7, 1, 2, 5, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 6, 6, 5, 5, 6, 2, 1, 7, 6, 7, 1, and then rest. Now we're on page 2. 5, 1, 6, 2, 1, a whole bunch of 7s, 7, 7, 7, 7, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 6, 2, 1, and bring it on home with 7, 7, 7, 7, 6, 7, 1. Okay, now let's go through and break down our Roman numerals. So sure enough, the key is going to be G, and our first Roman numeral is going to be 5 because we have the D chord. Then we go to 1, then we go to 4, and then we have 1. Okay, nothing new until measure 7, where we have 6, D, 5. Okay, measure 10, have 1, 4, 1. Measure 14, you have a 2, 5, 1, 5, which launches us into the next page. We have 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. That D in measure 22 is 5. And then 26, we have nothing. 27 and 28, we have 6. Then 2. And D is 5. And then G is 1. Okay, so let's look at some of the patterns and things we can spot. Okay, so number 1, we can see that we have, sure enough, at the very beginning, we're launching in from D to G. We also use scale degree 5 as a launching pad, but instead of going to 1, like you'd think about, we actually go up to scale degree 3. Pretty interesting there. Bonnie lies over the sea, Bonnie lies over the ocean. Bring back my Bonnie to me. So you can see that the chord progression for the first 8 measures is going, and we're going to forget about the D for now. So it's going 1, 4, 1, 6, 5. And then the chord progression for the next 8 measures starts off the same way, 1, 4, 1, but then changes to a 2, 5, 1. And then we have the 5, which is the last measure of page 1, which launches us into page 2, where we have 1, 4, 2, 5, 1, and then we have 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So I think what's interesting here about the last page is we can also see that the chord progressions for the first 8 measures and the second 8 measures of the second page are actually very similar too, in the sense that we go 1, 4, 2, 5, 1, and then in the last 8 measures we go 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So we can see that the chord progressions throughout this song actually are very similar, and that's part of what makes the song sound like the song, is that you have these chord progressions and then you're just changing out 1 or 2 chords the second time it comes around. Let's take a look at the melody. So what's interesting here is something called melody contour. And melody contour is the general shape of the melody. So we can see that the melody basically goes down, and then it basically ends by going up. So you can see it ends on a D here, then it ends on an A here. So basically going down to a D, and going up to an A, then going down to a D, then going up to a G. Now, that's a pretty interesting thing to happen for the melody. And sure, we can see that it's not perfectly descending and ascending, but it's sort of like where you end up sometimes counts more than what happens in between, just like when we're talking about analyzing the chords. The chord at the end and the chord at the beginning, where you end up, is oftentimes a lot more important than if we have other chords in the middle. So same thing here, where we're ending up is actually pretty important and very interesting to see that we have that going down to the D, going up to the A, going down to the D, going up to the G. And we can actually see here on the second page, we have a similar thing with the melody. Going bring back, oh, bring back my Bonnie to me, to me. We're going up to the G, and then we repeat the same melody. Bring back, oh, bring back my Bonnie to me. And then we're going up, but not quite as much, to the G. So we actually have the same exact melody here as we do here, and the only thing that's changing is the second time around. So what's interesting to look at some folk songs like this is that you have these chord progressions that change the second time around. You have these melodies that change the second time around, and that's what makes the song sound like the song, is that you have the consistency of having the melody be the same for the first four measures as it is for the third four measures, or the melody on line 1 is the same as melody on line 3, and then the melody is changed on line 2 and 4. And that's part of what makes the song sound like the song, is that you have the same exact notes in the same exact order with the same exact rhythm copied from line 1 to line 3, and then it's changed on line 2 and line 4, just like those chord progressions are the same for the first 4 measures, or the first 8 measures, or the last 4 measures, and then you just have one thing change. So that's basically what makes this song sound like this song, and what makes it so recognizable is that you have repetition that's broken up with a little bit of things being changed, both in the chords and in the melody. I will see you in the next. In this lesson, we're going to break down and understand the American folk song, Oh, Susanna. We're going to start, as always, by breaking down and understanding the key that this song is in. So we can see from the key signature, we have 1 sharp, which means we are either in the key of G major or E minor. Now, we're going to look at the chords to see if we can figure out what key that would be just based on the chords, and if not, then we will also go to the melody, and then if not, we'll combine the chords and the melody to see if we can really figure out the key. So our first 3 chords, very confusing. We have D, E minor, and G. So right now, pretty much anyone's guess at this point for level 1. Now we can see, sure, we go to D, then we have G, then we have D, G, then we have C, G, D, G, D, G, and we end on a G. So look, we only have 1 E minor chord in the whole thing, and it's only for 1 measure, and it's only in the second measure. So right there already, you should be very, very skeptical. I don't know if this is really an E minor, because there's only 1 E minor chord. Sure, it's the second chord. And sure, we've been talking about launching in from 5s to 1s, but here's the thing. That's not the case here, because if we think about it in the key of E minor, we'd actually have flat 7 as D, 1 being E, and then 3 being the G in terms of the chord. So the fact that we end the whole song on a G, and the fact that there's only 1 E minor, that already points very, very strongly to this being in the key of G major. But let's take a peek at the notes. So the first, let's say, line, we have A, B, D, 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 E, D, B, G, A. Now, if we think about this from an E minor perspective, this would be 4, 5, flat 7, flat 7, flat 7, 1, flat 7, 5, flat 3, 4. If we think about it in the key of G, it would be 2, 3, 5, 5, 5, 6, 5, 3, 1. So I don't think that there's one that points very, very strongly to one or the other at this point. But let's take a look at the last 4 measures. Okay, so let's imagine the last 4 measures if we're in the key of E minor. That would be 5, 5, 4, 4, 3. Not very likely that the song's going to end on a 3, scale degree flat 3 for E minor. Also, very unlikely that it would end with a G major chord above it. Looking at the last 4 measures and imagining we're in the key of G major, we'd have 3, 3, 2, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1 sounds like much more of a strong ending than 5, 4, 3. Also, you can see that the chords we have a D chord to a G chord. And what chord comes before that? Yeah, we have a D to a G, which, as we know, 5 to 1, that's like rocket fuel to drive us towards something. That's driving us to the end of the song. And because we end on scale degree 1, and also the chord above scale degree 1 is a G, we can very confidently say that the key of this song is G major. So let's start off by doing our scale degree analysis. So I'm going to go up to the top, put scale degree, put the key of G. Okay, so we start with 2, 3, 5, 5, 5, 6, 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 5, 5, 6, 5, look out, 6, 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1. All right, page number 2. 4, 4, 6, 6, 6. There you go. 5, 5, 3, 1. 2, 1, 2. Measure 27 now. 3, 5, 5, 6, 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2. Bring us on home to 1. All right, let's do our Roman numerals. From the top, first we write our key. We start off on 5. Then we go to 6. We're on 1. The banjo on my knee is 5. I'm 1. Always in it. One of my love. 5, 2, 1. Now, page 2, we have Oh, Susanna, oh, 1, you cry for 5, all right, 1, 1, 1. Well, not scale degree 1, but chord 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then 5, 1. Okay. Now let's look at some cool patterns and break this whole thing down. Okay, so just like in the last song, we talked about the melody going up and down. We actually have a similar thing here in the sense that the melody goes banjo on my knee. It goes up to the A, and then going to Louisiana, my true love for to see. The melody goes down. Oh, Susanna, oh, don't you cry for me, to the A. And guess how it's going to end? I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee, down to the G. So it's interesting to look at the melody in the sense that it's ending on the G and also on the A. And the A is like a question and the G is like an answer. So talking about the chords, I think what's interesting here is let's actually ignore these first two chords and let's just look at everything else in the first page. So we have a G to a D to a G to a D to a G. So we're going 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. 1 5 1 5 1, just back and forth. So it's all going to sound like one kind of thing. That's all going to be one area. It's like almost painting just with two different colors. Like if you've ever seen those pictures where it's like a famous celebrity and it's just two colors and it's their face, yeah, it's like that. You're just painting the whole song with two colors. Now, here's where things get really interesting is page 2 is the first time that we see 4. And that actually gives us a feeling of something new happening. In addition to something new happening, we can see that the pattern of the melody that we had on page 1 of gets totally broken. So in addition to us changing the chords, we're also totally changing the melody. Oh, Susanna, we're going to 4. So in addition to creating a change or a difference in feeling from the 1-5-1 and that melody on the first page, we're changing up the chord and also how the melody is structured. Don't you cry for me, except for ending on the A. Come from Alabama with the banjo on my knee. And then we're back to the 1-5-1. So basically, this entire song is made up of chord 1-5-1 with this melody that repeats. And the only difference, the only thing that really changes is here on page 2, where we go to both scale degree 4 and also chord 4. And that really creates something different, something interesting happening. That's what creates the, you feel like it's a different section. It's like if you've ever been out to eat and you've had a salad and then there's like an appetizer or a soup as an appetizer, and then you have your main dish or your entree. It's like the difference between those two, not that one is less or worse. We're not comparing like calorie content here. But what we're saying is that you have this definite feeling of something different happening. And something different happening because the 4 chord just has not shown up until page 4. And then when the 4 chord happens there, that's a real shift. It's a real change in gears, if you will. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to break down and understand the American classic spiritual song, When the Saints Go Marching In. First thing for us to do, as always, is to figure out the key of the song. So let's look at the key signature. We have 1 sharp, which means we are either in the key of G major or E minor. Let's look a little further and see which it's going to be. So first we're going to look at the chords. G, C, G, C, G, D, G, C, G, D, G. Well, based off of that already, okay, first and last chord is G. There isn't a single E minor in the whole song, so just based off that, we can very confidently say already, yeah, I think it's going to be in the key of G. But before we do that, let's also take a quick look at the melody. So let's imagine the melody for the first 1-2 measures as being in the key of E minor. So we'd have flat 3, 5, flat 6, flat 7. Okay, that's only one common note. Whereas if we think of the melody in terms of G, we'd have 1, 3, 4, 5. On top of that, 5 landing on the strongest beat. We are in the time signature of 4, 4. We also have 3 landing on strong beat of measure 1. Okay, now let's look at our last 2 measures. Sure enough, strongest beat, we have a G. Strongest beat, we also have a G. Now, here's the thing. Let's look at these last 2 measures and think about them in E minor. So we would have scale degree flat 3 to 4, back to flat 3. Okay, now let's think about those last 2 measures in terms of G major. We'd have 1, 2, 1, much more likely to end on a 1. On top of that, look, there's a G chord right here with a G note right here. There's no way that's going to be an E minor key when that is the case. Okay, let's keep things rocking and rolling. So let's do our scale degree analysis. Put scale degree in the key G. So we go 1, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and then we repeat the melody with different chords. That's interesting. 1, 3, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5, 3, 1, 3, 2. Measure 9, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3, 5, 5, 5, 4. Measure 13, 3, 4, 5, 3, 1, 2, 1. There you go. All right, now let's do our Roman numerals. So I'm going to start with the key of G. Okay, and our first one is, sure enough, going to be 1. Then we go to 4. Then we go to 1. 1, 4, 1. All right, second line, we have 4 to 1 to 5. And then line 3, we have to be in that number. Then we have 4. Last line, we have 1, 5, 1. Okay, let's take a look for some patterns. So I think the interesting thing to notice is the melody. We have this little idea of 1, 3, 4, 5 right here. We have 1, 3, 4, 5. And we can see, again, we have 1, 3, 4, 5. Again, we have 1, 3, 4, 5. And then we don't have 1, 3, 4, 5 again. So we almost have 1, 3, 4, 5 here at the end. We have 3, 4, 5. And you can see that if we had 1, we would turn this into a quarter rest, and we'd put a quarter note there. So we can see that we have this pattern 4 times. Now, I think what's interesting is that as we have these 1, 3, 4, 5, that's like going up. It's like walking up the stairs of the scale. I think what's interesting is that in line 3, which is the only line that does not have this pattern, we actually almost have the opposite. We have 3, 3, 2, 1, which is going down. Now, if we look at the melody contour again, we have basically in line 1, it goes up to a D. In line 2, it goes down to an A. In line 3, it goes up to a C. And then in line 4, it goes down to a G. Now, if we look at the chord progression for the first 8 measures, we have 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 5. Okay. Ending on 5 in an 8-measure group, that's like a question. And then we have 5, 1, because remember this D here is actually going to apply to this measure here. So we have 5, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. So we ended this 8 measures up here on a 5, and we ended this 8 measures here on a 1. That's like question, and this is like answer. So we can see, sure enough, that we're using the 5, 1, maybe not in note to note, maybe not in chord to chord, but in group of 8 measure to group of 8 measure. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to break down and understand the traditional English ballad Scarborough Fair. The first thing for us to do, as always, is to figure out the key of the piece of music. So let's take a look at the key signature. We see no sharps and no flats, which means we are either going to be in the key of C major or A minor. Let's take a look at the chords and see if we can figure out which that's going to be. So we have A minor, E minor, G, A minor, E minor, A minor. Oh, there's our C. C, G, A minor, D minor, G, A minor. Okay, but it's starting and ending on an A minor. So that right there should tell you, first off, everything you need to know. It's going to be in the key of A minor. But let's check our first, well, two measures and our last two measures. Okay, so let's imagine the first two measures as if it's the key of A minor. So we would have 1, 1, 5, 5, 5. That's a whole bunch of common minor notes. Now let's look at the last two measures. That would be in the key of A minor. Imagining we would have 2, 1, flat 7, 1. Okay, sure, some common notes in there from A minor as well. Now let's imagine the first two measures as if it was the key of C major. We'd have 6, 6, 3, 3, 3. Sure, those three are common notes, but to start off with 6, 6, we know those are not common notes, especially looking for the strongest beat of the measure. We're in 3, 4, where that's an A, highly unlikely that that's going to be for the key of C. Now we can look at our final two measures, and we have, imagining we're in the key of C, we would have 7, 6, 5, 6 to end a melody on scale degree 6 in C, highly unlikely. On top of that, to end it with a A minor chord, highly unlikely that we're in the key of C major, more likely we're in the key of A minor. So we can see that, sure enough, and also the fact that this right here, the strongest beat of the measure, of the last measure, we have an A, that's scale degree 1. Not very likely that we're going to see scale degree 6 on a strongest beat in the key of C as the very last and final note. So we can say very confidently that we are in fact in the key of A minor. So let's start with our scale degrees. So we're going to write scale degree A minor. Okay, and we have 1, 1, 5, 5, 5, 2, 3, 2, 1. Oh, then we're jumping up an octave. 1, 7, 5. Now here's where things get interesting. 6, but we're not going to put a flat in front of it because this F sharp right here, normally the scale degree 6 in an A natural minor scale would be F natural, but because we're raising it up 1/2 step, we're not going to write the flat next to that 6. We're going to leave that 6 alone. Then we're to 4 and 5. 1, 1, 1, 7, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 7. Last line. 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 1. So let's do our Roman numerals. First things first, we're going to write our key. All right, we have 1, 5, 7, 1, nothing until measure 7, where we have 5, we have 1, 10, 11, 12, we have a C, it's going to be 3, and G, which is 7, A minor, which is 1, D minor, which is 4. I'm going to put that under the speed checklist. Speed checklist, by the way, that's for people who are playing instruments when they play the song. It's to help them keep track of how fast they're playing. G7, again going under the speed checklist. And then A is 1. Okay, so very interesting that we have this F sharp note here. So oftentimes you'll find, especially in minor songs, that 6 and 7 can get raised by 1/2 step, and you'll end up not writing a flat in front of scale degree 6 or scale degree 7 in minor songs. And it's not terribly, terribly common, but you will see it. Now, let's look at the melody because this is completely different from all the melodies we've seen before. This is actually an older melody, which is one of the reasons why it's so different. So we have, are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. What is interesting is that we can see ones and fives in the melody. So we can see that Scarborough Fair, this is ending here on scale degree 1. Rosemary and thyme, that's ending on scale degree 5. Oh, there's our 1 and our 5, even though sure enough the chord is still 1 above that scale degree 5. Remember me to one who lives there. Going down to 7. She once was a true love of mine. And then ending on 1. So we can see that the melody for the first 8 measures is like it's a question. Are you going? It's literally a question. There's literally a question. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. It's a question. Then we have the answer. Remember me to one who lives there. She once was a true love of mine. And that's the answer. So a lot of times melodies do have questions and answers, and we break that whole thing down, and you also learn how to write melodies in Theory 3. But for now, let's look at the chords. So A minor, E minor, G, E minor, A minor, C, G, A minor, D minor, G, A minor. So you can see that the chords, there isn't really a chord progression that is repeated over and over again. And this actually also clues us into how old this song is. This song was written and created before there were really chord progressions. That's how old this song is. So you can see with something like, when the saints go marching in, we have this, this 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 5 thing. And then, sure, it changes in the end, but it doesn't change as much. It's still using the same chords in different patterns. And the chords are all over the place. Like A minors, E minors, D minors, G's, C's. There's no real pattern. You can see the pattern in the melody in terms of the question and the response. But there's not a clear pattern, like, for example, with Home on the Range, where you had a distinct chord progression pattern. So that clues us into, as I said, that the song is old. It's older than chord progressions. This was around when people were, doing minstrel things. This song is from like medieval times. So it's very, very old. So it's interesting to see that if you're thinking about maybe writing your own music or even just understanding music historically, you can see that you get these clues of how to make songs sound more or less modern. A song with a chord progression that repeats over and over again sounds more modern than a song that just has chords that kind of follow along with the melody. I will see you in the next lesson. This is your final video for the Best Music Theory Course for Beginners 1. I hope you had so much fun. I know you learned a ton. If you want to keep on analyzing lead sheets, you can check out bestsheetmusic.com. There's a whole bunch of level 1 lead sheets there you can grab, download, and analyze as well. I also recommend, if you want to understand more about writing music, that you take some music lessons. We've got some great teachers on bestmusiccoach.com. Congratulations on completing the Best Music Theory course for beginners. You are now ready to take any level 1 lead sheet, break it down, understand it. You are also now ready for theory level 2, where you're going to learn even more chords, like what happens on scale degree 2 when we harmonize the natural minor scale, and on scale degree 7 when we harmonize a major scale. You're going to learn about understanding song form. You're going to learn about new types of chords called seventh chords. You're going to learn about inversions. What happens when the notes of a triad are actually out of order and it doesn't go root, third, fifth, but it goes third, fifth, root, or fifth, third, root, or fifth, root, third. You're going to learn all about that, how to identify different parts of a song, different sections of a song. And Theory 2 is going to prepare you to start to write your own complete songs with melody, chords, chord progressions, and also allow you to understand, analyze, and break down even more complex music that you know and love. It's truly been an honor to be able to share this with you, and I am so, so stoked for you really taking this step forward in your ownership and understanding of music and deepening your relationship with the music you know and love and music theory in general. I will see you in the Best Music Theory course for Beginners 2. See you there.